Welcome to the MBU Football Coaches Show with Coach B. My name is Guy Danhoff. We want to welcome you to again another show. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our guest, and that's Coach B. Coach, how are you doing? And how was the long bus ride?
Doing well. We're used to that bus ride. It's a lot better than when we used to go to Michigan or northern Indiana. So we'll consider that a short bus ride for what we used to have. So not too bad.
I was going to say, absolutely. Those Michigan trips could get a little lengthy, as you know. So with that, Coach, let's dive right in. As you know, went up to play St. Ambrose, the Bees. They're up at their stadium, and obviously things didn't turn out the way you expected. And it just seemed that, actually, I think, was it the first or second drive? The Spartans were driving pretty well. And then Cody went down. You had another center in. And you're actually driving, and then all of a sudden an errant snap. And then it just seemed at that point things that it took a lot more to get back on track. Is that about right?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Losing Cody obviously hurts. He's a guy that's been, an integral part of our offense for 4 years and been a real guy at center that you could rely on and count on from week to week. Obviously, anytime you lose your center, it's different than losing other positions because of how important that center quarterback exchange is. Now, we work on that every day, and we work on it with, 3 or 4 guys that could potentially rotate in case of injuries or something like that. But Thomas was the guy who came in, and I really thought Thomas did an excellent job. He did an excellent job of communicating to the offensive line. There's a lot, as you well know, on the center to communicate calls, blocking assignments, that kind of stuff, so everybody's on the same page. But it just so happened he had one bad snap, and it came at an inopportune time. I'm not sure that any time you get a bad snap, it's a good time. But to your point, we were really moving the ball pretty well. We were driving. We were on the 30-yard line, well within a scoring zone. Or close to a scoring zone anyway, sitting 2nd and 5, and all of a sudden we get the snap over the head. We were able to get it back, obviously, but when you're sitting then 3rd and 30, it really changes what your next play call is and what goes from there. I'm not sure. I think overall, the offense, we moved the ball. We just were not good when we got in those scoring zones. We get the late interception right before the half when we were deep in their own territory, and that hurts. You got to be able to put points on the board. And unfortunately, we weren't able to capitalize, and there were just times defensively where, as the game wore on, offensively, I think there were some moments where we really just kind of lost our confidence and our ability to really play the next play, which is something we talk a lot about. If you got to be able to have a short memory, flush it, and move forward. And we didn't do a great job of that. And there was situations there where I believe 3 out of 4 offensive possessions ended in a turnover, and the defense was back out there. And you do that, it puts a lot of pressure on the defense. It puts a lot of pressure on the offense because they start pressing. And then ultimately, I think what happens is, guys are just getting frustrated. The offense is frustrated because they're not doing what their job is. The defense is frustrated because they're getting put out in bad situations. And, one thing leads to the next, and then all of a sudden snowballs out of control. And I think that's really what we were facing. It was just a situation where we weren't sharp, didn't play our best game. And anytime you do that in this league, you're going to get beat. That's just how difficult the league is, and it doesn't matter who you play.
Absolutely. With that though, there were some big bright spots. I thought actually, your offensive line play really wasn't bad. It just the snap that was bad. But you're exactly right. Even with Cody out, one of the stats that I found that really interesting is that, the Spartans on offense have only given up 2 sacks on the entire season. Coach, that's an amazing stat. Now, I think it's combination. I think Josh Munn does a really good job of either running or throwing the ball, and not getting interceptions, and or the offensive line truly is giving the quarterback some time. So as I was doing my research for this week, I think that's a great momentum stat, that plays to the Spartans' benefit. So I want you to react to that.
Well, that's something we had talked about. Anytime you have negative plays on offense, it's hard to overcome those, whether it's, like we said, a bad snap or a sack. Right. But I feel like the same way. I feel like our pass protection has been excellent all year. In fact, going I want to say into the week, they had us down as one sack rather. And really that one sack was St. X when Josh rolled out of the pocket and should have thrown it away and got tackled for a loss, which they ruled as a sack. That to me does not go against the offensive line because he's out of the pocket, he's scrambling. And it was really a play where we were moving the pocket anyway. So it wasn't like it was a quarterback hurry that got him flushed out. I think the offensive line, and to your point, it is a combination thing. It's not just the offensive line. It's Josh understanding, knowing where to go with the football, getting the ball out of his hands or making a play with his legs. And then the unsung heroes of all that is the running backs. Let's not underestimate what the running backs have done in making sure they're on the same page with the offensive line and working together with them to make sure that blitzes are picked up and that kind of thing. So that right there is something we have spent a lot of time on this spring to make sure that our quarterback is protected. And I think all of them have really done a good job to make sure that we haven't taken those negative plays nearly as much as what we have in the past.
Absolutely. With that, let's talk about a few of the Spartan standouts. Obviously, we always need to go to the defense first. In this case, Jalen Cowley again. What more can you say about Cowley and what he means to this team? As well as you had a couple more of the younger guys stepping up too that had some very big games. So I was wondering if maybe you could speak, to the defensive standouts, because as you said, there was 4 drives where the defense was literally on the field with very little rest, and that's very difficult to do. So with that being said, though, there was certainly some standouts again on defense.
Well, JC's a guy we talk about all the time. He's just shows up every day. Like you said, there's not much more I can say about him. He's a guy that is going to expect the best out of his teammates. He's hard on his teammates. I think sometimes they don't quite even know how to react to him because he is hard on them. But when you show up to work every single day and put it out there like he does, whether it's in practice or not, you're going to hold people to a high standard. And ultimately it's our job and really our guys' job to understand that it's not a personal thing. It's about business. And that's what he is every day that he walks in this building. So he's a really important piece of our defense. I think the other thing, I got to give credit to the whole group and to the coaching staff. When they were put in those bad situations, they didn't give up touchdowns. They gave up, they gave up field goals, and several times stopped. And they had no choice but to give up field goals at times because of the fact that we were put them in a zone that was, deep in our territory. So they're out there in a scoring zone, and to hold teams to a field goal, that gives us a chance to stay in the game and a chance to continue doing what we need to do offensively. So that's the whole unit. I think they did a great job. There's guys that rose up and had really good games at every position up front. I think Jeremiah Austin is a guy who continues to be a guy that we can really count on and develop. He's really developing well on the defensive line. Blake Kite's a guy, he's a little bit banged up, but he's showing his toughness. And young guy, Cole Williams, who filled in at linebacker for Colin Thomas and Rook Rowe. Those are some guys that we've really had to lean on, and they've stepped up and did a nice job as well.
So with that on the offensive side, let's talk a little bit about, I know I kind of joked about it a little bit last week about that new play called Jet 3. Well, Jet 3 just isn't something I made up. You actually ran whatever you're going to call it, but I call it Jet 3 from a broadcast standpoint. And I got to tell you, Coach, that jet sweep with Michael Malone was very well executed. And it was pretty cool seeing him put on those afterburners and get untouched heading into the end zone for one of your two scores. I was wondering if maybe you could talk about the impact of having Michael now playing on some of the offensive snaps.
Yeah, Mike's done a good job on both sides of the ball. We've talked a bunch about what he does defensively when he's out there, and he gives us a added weapon offensively where he can go out and use his speed, and that proved to be a big weapon for us on Saturday, using him both in the pass game where he caught a deep route and caught a couple post balls. And then we used him in the jet sweep situation. And, the guys on the perimeter did an excellent job blocking, and he was able to get in there untouched. I was a little bit surprised that he was able to get untouched. I was listening to Coach Griffin from the box, and he's like, I think he's going to score. And sure enough, he comes around the edge and got in the end zone. So, that's obviously Mike's ability to be a playmaker.
Right.
He's got great vision when he has the ball, and was able to make a couple cuts off of blocks that were there and get in the end zone. And you mentioned his speed. You can't coach that. He's got natural speed, and it's a huge threat to us. But everybody on that play, especially the wide receivers on that, did a great job of blocking and gave him a crease, and he was able to find it.
Absolutely. All I can say is when I saw it happen, I was just grinning from ear to ear on that jet sweep, because we talked about it right here on your show a week ago.
Well, Coach Schnabel, he does a lot of our play calling, right? And so he called the formation, which we had put in a little bit different to be unbalanced, and we just called it Danhoff right. So
there you go.
Danhoff right, and here we go. Waltz in the end zone.
Exactly. All right. With that, Coach, let's talk about your upcoming game. We have two remaining. The nice thing this week, though, is you're playing St. Francis, and we're two teams that are kind of, equally matched, if you would, on at least as far as the record goes. Both our ball clubs are 1-4. We're actually 1-3 in the conference, as they're 1-4. And so, as you look at this, as I'm looking at the stats right now, just a quick glance, very similar in total offense, in terms of total yards allowed per game. So I'm just saying that it looks like on the stat sheet, pretty evenly matched. But what have you seen on film this week that maybe gets you really excited about the Spartans' chances of having a big day?
Well, not much gets me really excited. I mean, that's a good football team. I think this is a game where we've got to show up and compete as though it's St. X or Olivet or St. Ambrose. Any of the games that we play, we've got to show up and be us. And that's what we've talked about a lot this week is, be the team that you've shown the previous 3 weeks, whether it's against Trinity, when we were up at Olivet, or when we were at St. Xavier. I felt like we weren't the same team playing St. Ambrose. So we've got to get back to who we are, which is a tough and physical team. I felt like St. Ambrose out-physicaled us. They were much more physical than we were on Saturday, and that's ultimately what led to their win. And that's the way this league is. You've got to play 60 minutes of full-on physical football. I think this team presents some challenges on both sides of the ball. And to your point, I think they're very similar to us because they've been even in their 4 losses, they've been really close games. They've lost to Olivet on a late punt return that gave Olivet maybe a 28-20 win. St. Xavier, they were in it till the end. Robert Morris, Roosevelt now, they were in it till the end. So all at St. Ambrose, that was a much closer game than what we had with them. So they are like looking us in the mirror, and I'm sure their coach probably feels the same way. Is like, who's going to show up and what's it going to take for us to get over the hump into the win column? They're a physical team. They do some stuff defensively that I think we can take advantage of, but it's also stuff that presents some challenges to us, and we've had to spend a little extra time game planning for as well. So it's going to be anybody's ball game. And it's going to be who comes out of the locker room and has strapped up their chin strap the tightest and bite down on their mouthpiece the hardest and goes out and plays 60 minutes of football.
So, Coach, with this game also for the Spartan fans, so it's senior day. And I was wondering if maybe you could speak to that, because at least on our game notes for the media, we show only Cody Markle as the only true senior leaving, which I'm sure you and your coaching staff have got to be delighted. Obviously, not that Cody's leaving, but the fact that you only have one player leaving heading into the fall. So maybe you could speak to a little bit about the significance of Senior Day, how it plays into your upcoming fall season.
Well, with the NAIA's ruling that gives everybody an extra year, we went to guys early on and just said, hey, what are you thinking? And everybody said they were going to plan on coming back. And that was a big deal for us, and something where obviously this spring was very important to us as a way to get some good snaps under our belt, having been off for so long, give the guys a chance to play, but really wanting to set a foundation for what next fall could potentially look like, getting everybody back and understanding what it's going to take to win and all those things that we continue to harp on and develop throughout this process. Cody was a guy who came to us early on and said that he probably wasn't going to come back.
Right.
Obviously we would love for him to, but he's set to graduate this May, which we're extremely proud of him and excited for him. So he's going to graduate in right on time, 4 years, and being an offensive lineman and a guy who's played as many games as Cody has, he just kind of felt like his body didn't want to take that continual beating, that it is on an offensive lineman and a center. And like I said, a guy who's played as much football as Cody has. So, we love what he's done. He's been a great leader, a great guy ever since day one. And I was just kind of reminiscing in my head of when he was an incoming freshman and he was up here all summer sitting down with Coach Williams in the staff room going through plays and fronts and calls. And, he's just been 100% bought in since day one. And he'll be very tough to replace, and his leadership is very tough to replace, but we're extremely proud of him and can't wait to see him on Saturday. Unfortunately, with his injury, his season is over. And that's probably the biggest heartbreaking thing for me and for our staff as a coach, when a guy like that gets his career, his, season cut short. We've got a plan for him where we've kind of discussed that we're going to potentially suit him up and maybe hopefully if we do our job that we can get him in for one last play and get the greatest formation of football and let him go out on a high note, and hopefully we can execute that play and get him in on that. But for all intents and purposes, it's just unfortunate that he's not able to really finish his career with everybody here at home. But obviously he's always a big part of everything we do. Even now with him being out injured, he's got a practice script in his hand. He's working with the O-line. He's giving Thomas pointers. I mean, he just doesn't miss a beat. He loves the game and is a great teammate.
Absolutely. And with that, Coach, I spent a little more time in camp with obviously your offensive linemen and the defensive linemen too, because obviously they practice together so much, but particularly the offensive line. And I've gotten to know Cody, and, just for Spartan fans to know, he's been a player here from 2017 to 2021. He's appeared in 22 games. One of his claim to fame is that he's also anchored part of that offensive line back in 2018. We all may remember Chris Baldwin. At that year in 2018, he was the number 9 rusher in the NAIA, as Chris averaged 127 yards per game, and Cody was right there in the mix. Also this year, again, tributed to Cody and the entire offensive line. As I said, to date, our offensive line has only given up 2 sacks, statistically speaking. And Cody's had such a great career, and I actually took a selfie with Cody in the Ice Bowl on your opening. I'll probably post it this week as in tribute to him for Senior Day. He's one of the few guys that had the bare arms, the cold didn't affect him.
Yeah,
he's like a player's player, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, he's definitely a throwback. He's a typical grimy offensive lineman who takes pride in it. And there was nothing that was going to put sleeves on his arms on that day, despite how cold it was. And yeah, he's a really fun guy to be around. Just a great, it's one of the most fun parts of my job and us as coaches is being able to watch the transformation of our guys that come in as 17, 18-year-old pups, and they're leaving as 22, 23-year-old young men. And, there's such a big change that you see in these guys that have been here for 4 years. And, not that Cody wasn't a hard worker and a great young man to coming in, but just seeing who he's become and excited for what the future holds for him.
Absolutely. And Coach, only I can say this from my past days of playing as an offensive lineman. When you lose your center, when you lose your leader and the guy that makes all the offensive calls, knowing that this is his senior day, there's a little extra motivation for the Spartans, especially on the offensive side of the ball, wanting to, obviously, as they say, do this for Cody, that kind of thing. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the offense, especially the linemen, respond, in given, hopefully, if we write the script the right way, Cody could come in on victory formation for last play of the game.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great.
That would be ideal.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've kind of discussed with him, and he asked if he could do that and at least be on ready to go in and do something like that. And I told him absolutely. So our goal is to get to that point and give him that opportunity. But whether or not it plays itself out like that or not, I know at the end of the day, Cody cares about us getting a win, and that's all he cares about. And he's, like I said, he's been such a great leader and part of our program that'll go down, for a long time. He'll be one of those guys that you talk about from an offensive line perspective, like Johnny Reed and Cody. And, you really look back at our history, really a young history. We've, knock on wood, we have been extremely fortunate that, Johnny Reed, up until right before, midway through his senior year, was a center who never missed a snap.
Right.
And then we transitioned right into Cody, who went through one season where he had a bad ankle and, maybe missed a couple games here and there. But by and large, we've had some extreme consistency at that position, which is huge.
It is. So with that, Coach, great thing about coming up, obviously on Saturday, 5 o'clock kickoff, again, under the lights at Spartan Field. It is the final home game of the year. Again, it's senior day. And Coach, what do you tell your players for the final home game of the year?
Same thing we've been keep telling them is this is no different than any other game. It's a home game, so you got to go out and protect your turf.
Right.
We've talked a lot about that, something that we'll continue to talk about because we do have our own stadium. And we have to, we have an opportunity to have a winning record at home, which I think is extremely important. Mm-hmm. We have to continue talking about being one of the toughest, most physical teams on the field every week. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we respond there. And ultimately, just something that we continue to talk about is trust the process and follow the process. Pay attention to the details, plan and prepare. Listen, learn, and grow. Those are all pieces that we talk about as the process that we have to work through on a play, drive, series, and throughout the entire game. And don't underestimate your opponent, because when you do, and something I told these guys on Monday, with the NCAA tournament going on, it's a great example of how teams get knocked off all the time, upset, 15s over 2s, 1s over, whatever it looks like. Illinois, the 1 seed, expecting to go to the Final Four, gets knocked off. And, at the end of the day, there's a lack of focus. There's a lack of underestimating your opponent. And it happens in any sport, any game, anybody can win on any given day. And, I had some guys say, well, like last week, well, they're not better than us. And the thing I just kept telling them, well, they may not be, but they were today. And that's all that matters, So it really doesn't matter who's better or who's not. It just matters who's better on that day for those 60 minutes. And that's something we've got to go out and do.
Absolutely. And Coach, we want to say again, thank you for taking the time. Kickoff will be at 5 o'clock. And we want to wish you all the best. Certainly we'll give a lot of shout out and love to Cody for senior day.
Sure.
And all that he has meant to this program. He's certainly, if you ever get a chance to meet him, he is a fine young man and a great ambassador of this program. I can't wait to future games when he's coming back just as a fan, we'll get him up in the booth and, get him in between the quarters or something, because he's also quite the character. Another thing I love about him. So anyways, Coach, big game at home against St. Francis, and it all starts right at 5:00. We want to thank you, our Spartan fans, for tuning in right here on the Spartan Digital Network.